and welcome on back to She's Diabetic. For those of you who are new here, welcome. My name is Andrea. I have been a type 1 diabetic for over 19 years, and this is just a channel all about my life with type 1 diabetes, tips, tricks, hacks, body positivity, all of that good stuff. So for those of you who are new here, welcome, and for those of you who are returning, welcome back. So I've introduced myself to you, but now I need to introduce my very esteemed guest. This is my boyfriend, David. We actually have done one other video together, which was a dating and type 1 diabetes video, which I will link up below if you guys haven't seen it. It's been one that I've gotten a lot of really positive feedback on, so thank you for that. We've gotten a lot of positive feedback on it. And a lot of people have said they wanted to see more content between the two of us because you have a type 1 diabetic and a non-type 1 diabetic, and that always creates an interesting dynamic where it opens up questions that maybe us as type 1 diabetics would know off the bat and we wouldn't think twice about it, but non-type 1 diabetics have questions about, and they aren't second nature to them. So, for this video, we decided that David is going to ask me questions that he thinks non-type 1 diabetics have always wondered about type 1 diabetics.
Well, at least I've wondered about them.
At least he's wondered about them.
And you don't know these questions.
And I don't know these questions.
She's not seen these.
Exactly. So it's going to be 10 questions, I think, right?
10 questions.
10 questions from a non-type 1 diabetic with a working pancreas, I'm so jealous, to a type 1 diabetic with a non-functional pancreas.
Correct.
So here we go, 10 questions coming at you guys. Take it away.
My first question is, how many times a day do you think about your diabetes?
Okay, great question.
Or maybe the question is, how much time in a day do you not think about your diabetes?
Yeah, that's a fair, yeah. Okay, so my dad always used to say he thinks like not more than 5 minutes go by without thinking about your type 1. And I would say in some ways that's quite accurate. Like you're always thinking about it, but I thought about it a lot more when I was on multiple daily injections. So like I would think about constantly monitoring it, think about my when I had taken my Lantus, which was the long-acting insulin, when I had taken my short-acting, corrections I needed to make, everything like that. But when I got an insulin pump, that took that time down because I felt like the pump was doing a lot more of the hard work for me. And obviously I didn't have to physically take a pen and inject myself. And then when I got the Dexcom CGM, that also took it down like a couple notches in terms of the thinking about it level, because I wasn't wondering where my blood sugar was, I knew where it was. But that being said, it means you have more information to digest, so still you're thinking about it, if that makes sense. So long answer short, I would say probably not an hour goes by where I don't think about it. I think it's more frequent than that, but at least every hour. Yeah.
Okay, that's probably what I thought.
Is it?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think so.
Okay, cool.
Can you feel yourself going high and low, and what do they both feel like?
Great. Another great question.
Obviously.
Okay, so can I feel myself going high-low? The answer is yes. And it's not, it doesn't always feel the same.
Okay.
So on the whole, when I'm going high, I feel tired, lethargic. Sometimes I feel hungry when I'm going high, actually, but mostly tired and lethargic. When I'm going low, I feel shaky, nervous, anxious, sometimes sweaty, those type of things. But the way that feels when it's high and low isn't always the same variety of those groupings of feelings, if that makes sense. So it's not like, oh yeah, I'm shaking, that means I'm this, or oh yeah, I feel tired, that means I'm this. It's always different shades of. And then there'll be times, it's not often, but sometimes where I'm going low and I don't feel it, but I look at my Dexcom, or my Dexcom is like blaring at me, and I'm like, I'm low? But that is just, sometimes my body just doesn't feel it, which is why the alarms are great. But yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
2 follow-up questions.
Yes.
You feel hungry when you go high?
Sometimes I do, which is like, I think, you know, sometimes when you're tired and you feel hungry, like because your body's craving energy.
Yeah.
I think it's that type of thing.
But when you're high is when you should not eat. But you feel hungry.
Ideally not, yeah.
Okay,
But you feel sort of
That's
hungry.
rough.
Yeah, that's
okay.
right.
And then
Oh, and also when I'm low, I get really, really hungry.
okay, well that one would make sense.
Yeah, like want to eat the whole fridge out type of hunger.
Okay.
And it's happened many a time.
So you said the high and lows aren't always the same.
Yeah.
But do you ever feel like, oh, I went really high, and then you look and you've actually gone really low, or not really?
No.
Okay.
I wouldn't say no. I wouldn't say that's ever happened. But it's possible that it does happen for some people.
Yeah, that would be.
Like, this is just my personal experience. Like,
Right.
for some people, they experience things differently. For some people, they have no low awareness whatsoever. And when you have like a lack of hypo-awareness, that can be a really big issue. Because, like, for example, legally driving, if you don't have any awareness when you're going low, and that were to happen out on the road, you could put other drivers at risk, for example, or something like that. So it becomes, when you have no low awareness, that becomes quite a big issue in your life, which really sucks for a lot of people.
Yeah.
But then we have CGMs and all those sort of things, which can help give you an awareness for free, or without having to have it within you, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Okay. I know I've asked you this one before.
Yeah.
How do you dose insulin for food at a restaurant that you've never seen the food before?
Great question. No, this is a great question.
Yeah.
And actually, I want to make a video on eating out, because that's a whole other kettle of fish. And what you've latched onto there is a real issue. Like when you're eating out and you can't see the food first, but you want to get insulin into your
I don't
system.
understand how you would know what it's going to look
And it doesn't
or
have
size-wise or anything.
exactly. And it doesn't have a nutrition label either.
No.
Like that you
Not
can
on the
just
menu, right.
dose carbs for.
Right.
Okay. So the answer to this is twofold. First of all, when I'm going out to eat, what I will do once I've decided what I'm going to order is I will dose a small amount of insulin to get a pre-bolus on board.
Yeah, okay.
So a little bit of insulin working in my system to start preparing itself for the oncoming food.
Okay.
But I will only dose like a very, very, like the most conservative amount that I would take for that meal, so that I know I haven't taken too much.
Right.
So I do that first of all. Second of all, then when the meal comes, I will do a follow-up dose.
I see.
So to complete that amount. However, no nutrition label. So sometimes you can look online to see what the carbohydrate content is of something if you're at like a chain restaurant or something like that.
Yeah.
But otherwise, I've done a couple courses with the NHS where you have like plates of food, sort of presented pictures of plates of food presented in front of you, and you have to guess the carbohydrate content of those pictured meals, because a lot of it is guesstimating.
Yeah.
And another great tool for that I spoke about in a vlog, which I'll link up below as well, up above as well, is there's an app called Carbs and Cows, which I've shown you, which literally you can go into the app and see, okay, say you have a serving of potatoes like on your plate. You can see how much that amount of potatoes, like find a picture in the Carbs and Cows app, search for potatoes, find a picture, and then compare it and very vaguely guesstimate, although it's pretty accurate, guesstimate the carbohydrate amount that you then need to dose for once you see your meal.
So really you dose when you see the food, most of it.
Yeah, exactly. Dose when you see the food, but I like to get a pre-bolus on board.
Okay. what happens when you bolus for one thing, but then you end up having to have something else? Like
Yeah.
we were walking to get sushi one day,
Yeah.
and you bolused for it, and then
Yeah.
it started pouring rain,
Mhm.
so we turned around and went and had something totally different. And
Yeah.
I remember this was like the first time, and I was like, and you were like, oh, I already bolused, now we're gonna eat something else.
Yeah.
What I'm trying to say is, what do you do?
Yeah. Great question. So you bolus for a certain amount of carbohydrates.
Right.
So if that plan changes, you pretty much still need to meet that amount of carbohydrates. So why that sushi example is quite relevant is because sushi is very carb heavy. White rice, there's oftentimes sugar in the rice, so it's a real heavy hitting meal that you want to get a lot of insulin on board for, or at least I need that
Right.
for sushi. So if I turn around and I'm not having sushi anymore, but I'm having a chicken breast, well, I'm going to need to build up some carbs around that meal
Right.
to match for that sushi that I just dosed for. So if you have 50 grams of carb worth of insulin on board, you've got to match that if your plans change.
Yeah. And I never thought about if it took a long time for the food to come. I
Yeah.
never thought about that.
Yeah, if it takes a long time for the food to come, that's why I always dose that really conservative amount.
Yeah.
But if it takes a long time and you've got insulin on board, you're going down regardless. So that's a tricky game.
What about a device that could extract insulin that you've already given yourself?
That would Are you a scientist?
I can get it. I'll make a prototype.
Okay, you make a prototype, get back to me in 6 to 8 business weeks.
Exactly. Okay. What was number 5? Oh, this happened the other day.
Yeah.
We'll eat a meal, like
Mhm.
quite a substantial meal,
Mm-hmm.
and like a full sandwich and like a full bowl of soup.
Mm-hmm.
Then I get an alert on your Dexcom,
Yeah.
Dexcom Follow or Dexcom Share.
Yep.
What it's called.
Yep.
And it's like, oh, Andrea's went urgent low.
Yeah.
And I know you're not, a doctor or a scientist, but I always ask you, I'm like, how is that even possible?
Yeah.
And follow up to that,
Yeah.
do you then, even if you're so unbelievably full, have to just keep eating? Or do you wait for it to come up?
Okay.
That's a lot.
Yeah.
I'm back to that.
No, you're right. Okay. So the answer is there are two things that can be happening. First of all, I straight up there are a couple of things that could be happening. With that meal, for example, I got low after because I think I took too much insulin for that meal.
Okay.
I thought I had counted out the carbs right, but I had overestimated it.
Okay.
The second thing that can happen is that you pre-bolus too early. So you take insulin, say 10-15 minutes before. I have a video on pre-bolusing that I'll link again, lots of linked videos. But say you take insulin like 15 minutes before a meal because it takes some time for the insulin to get working.
Right.
But then you eat your meal 30 minutes later because you had to run out and get the sandwich meat because you didn't have it in the fridge, or you had to take a phone call or something like that.
Right.
Something interrupted that time window. So your insulin took effect too soon and you did not match it with the eating. So say your insulin hit a point, here where it brought you to a safe level to eat.
Right.
But then I don't eat till here, well, it's going to keep going down. And then you've got an issue on your hands. Third thing, which is tricky as well, it's sort of I'm getting off a little bit into the weeds here, but when you have a meal that is more slow release carbohydrates, it might not hit you as soon as something if you eat white rice as compared to brown rice or let's say a chicken breast, you're going to have very different outcomes after the meal. One is going to be a big spike that you need to plan for, and the other one would be a slow release protein only meal, basically, that you might need to take very little insulin for. So if I've got stuff that's going to slow the release of carbohydrates in my meal, well, that would either mean I've taken too much insulin up front again and not matched it well because it's going to release slower.
Okay.
Or it's just taking my body more time to digest the food, and therefore it's not hitting me at the time that I need it to hit, even if I do all my calculations right and everything like that. And then you end up with a bad low. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I feel like I kind of got off in the weeds on that.
Well, that's a lot.
But really, the main two are those two. And then there's also this other thing that's just like diabetes, this nightmare sometimes.
Yeah.
And sometimes you're just like, I ate the same meal yesterday.
Yeah.
And I took the same amount of insulin, and I took it 15 minutes or 10 minutes before the meal. Everything's the same, but diabetes is like, oh, no. We won't be repeating the same. Like, this is a test. This is an in-the-moment test. So, yeah.
Okay. How many times have you ripped out an infusion set?
Ooh, good question, because that happened the other day.
Yeah.
Not as many as you might think.
Okay.
I'd say I've probably, what David's referring to here, just in case people don't know, is an infusion set is the thing that is associated with an insulin pump. That is the patch that sits on your skin, that holds the cannula, that sits under your skin, that delivers the insulin via insulin pump.
Yeah.
So just in case.
Yeah.
How many times have I ripped it out? I'd say maybe under 10.
Really?
Under 10, maybe somewhere between 5 and 10. It's a really strong adhesive, I feel like, and therefore it doesn't really pull it out as often as you might think. But again, this is just my experience. Maybe different for some of you guys.
I remember early on, I was afraid to pull it out because I thought if I pulled it out, it would just start spewing insulin. A fountain of insulin. That's what I thought. And you were like, no, we take way less insulin than you thought.
Yeah.
Because I had no idea. I didn't know if it was,
Exactly.
I thought it might be a syringe full of insulin.
Yeah.
It was like a dose.
Well, and that's basically how it's portrayed in media. Is like, let's just like get this syringe full of liquid like to shoot up. And
so that's what I thought would happen. It would just, I would flood in a bath of insulin and I pulled it out. But apparently not.
Yes. That's not to know. No. But good question.
Yeah.
And good to...
Well, okay, so I have a question that will go into that, actually. Are you on a pump? Because insulin is now, I know, very potent and very, if not done correctly, can be very dangerous.
Yeah.
Are you ever afraid your pump could malfunction and pump too much insulin, resulting possibly in just death?
Yeah. Yes, is the honest answer. It more so was a fear before I came onto an insulin pump.
Yeah.
That was a fear. Because you just think you've got this machine attached to you. I was so used to only dosing the certain amount that I knew I could see physically was going to be released from the syringe or the pen. And that gave me a feeling of like comfort and control. Whereas an insulin pump, you're just interfacing with a machine, telling it what to do and hoping what you tell is what it does. It was more of a fear when I first started insulin pump therapy. Now, I don't worry about it so much. In fact, I probably haven't thought about that fear for like over a year, to be honest with you.
It probably is a fear.
It is a fear. It is a fear. And I think there were some fears about like insulin pump hacking and that
I remember you talked about that,
that was a thing for a while.
Because it Bluetooths to your phone.
No,
that's
doesn't.
That's the Dexcom.
That's Dexcom,
That's
exactly.
I get that confused sometimes.
That's all right. Yeah. But yeah, that's sometimes a bit of a fear, but I don't worry about it as much.
This became more of a question for me once I realized how little insulin you actually take.
Yeah.
And how just a little bit too much could be real bad.
Yep. Totally.
Okay.
Totally.
Okay, 3 more questions.
Okay.
These two are related, and they're sort of general, and you may have answered them in videos before.
Sure.
But...
Are you watching my videos? Please.
Well, yeah.
Yes. Carry on.
Okay.
I'll point you to the video if not.
Yeah. What is the worst... This isn't so much about you, but more in general.
Yeah.
What is, in your opinion, the worst thing you can say to a diabetic or ask someone about their diabetes?
Great question. Great question.
Yeah. As someone who was at one time and still is sort of ignorant about diabetes.
Yeah. Yeah. No, you're not ignorant, but yeah. I think there's all those classic things like, well, you're not fat, so how can you be diabetic? Or did you eat too much sugar growing up? Did you used to be really fat? Like, there are all these questions.
Has anyone ever asked you if you have the good diabetes or the bad diabetes?
Yes, yeah, I've heard that. But even for me, like, those questions don't bother me so much because I just think, okay, I'll just explain to you, like, it's not good or bad.
Yeah.
Both are rough.
Yeah.
And this is the difference between the two. So,
because nobody knows.
Nobody
As someone
knows.
without diabetes.
Yeah, exactly.
No one has any clue. I know we talked about that in our last video.
Yeah.
But like, full mystery.
Yeah. Yeah, totally.
So I'm sure people aren't trying to be like offensive or ignorant, but
that's the thing.
You're like, oh, I have type 1, and they're like, I don't know what that means.
Yeah.
Like, you need insulin, or
Yeah. Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's, I think, the thing I always try to remember. First of all, it's like a teaching opportunity, which is cool.
Yeah.
But also, if somebody's asking, they're being vulnerable themselves in asking. So I think I really try to respect that vulnerability, even if it comes off as a little crass or a little offensive. Like, even if somebody asks me, well, you're not fat, why are you type 1?
Has someone asked you that?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Like, even if somebody asks me that, I really don't get offended.
Okay.
But what I think the worst thing you can say to a type 1 diabetic is to assume you know what it's like to walk in their shoes and make any sort of comment alluding to that.
That's probably good in general for most things.
I think it is. I think it is exactly. It's like
you don't know what else you don't know what anyone else is going through.
Exactly.
Okay, yeah.
Exactly.
Right.
So if you were to say, oh, you're eating a cookie, you shouldn't eat that, you're a diabetic.
Oh, yeah, okay.
I think that is when it, again, it's a teaching opportunity, but when somebody is telling you what to do, I think that's tough.
Yeah.
Because it's such an all-encompassing disease that it's really hard to have somebody make a snap judgment just in a moment when you live a lifetime of this disease. That's hard.
Yeah.
But again, I mean, like, it's why I put so many caveats to my videos, is that obviously I make videos talking about type 1 diabetes and even throw advice out there. But I really try not to assume this is what people need.
Because everyone's diabetes is different.
Everyone's is totally different. Exactly.
Diabetes sucks. And it does whatever it wants.
It does whatever it wants, exactly. Yeah. And what's right for me isn't right for another person, or maybe right for another person.
Yeah.
But I think anything that encourages conversation is a beautiful thing.
Yeah. Anything
that begets, like, telling somebody what they should or shouldn't do is when it gets into trouble, I think, because it's just such a personal disease. There are general rules you can apply to it, but every single person is different.
Yeah.
So to say you shouldn't eat that cookie, or you should eat that cookie, or you should have cinnamon, or the shoulds, I think.
Okay, I have a follow-up question.
Yeah, okay.
Sort of about this. When you are dealing with diabetes doctors and nurses, and they're telling you what to do, and they're not diabetic, are you ever sort of like, well, you're not diabetic, you don't really know what I'm going through, or not really?
Yeah.
I'm sure they're all doing their best, and obviously they're medically qualified, but they don't have diabetes. I just wondered if it ever crossed your mind, like, well, don't tell me to change this or do this, or I'm doing this wrong, because you don't really know. Yeah.
I mean, a little bit. Sometimes I do feel that way. Only because like a meeting with a doctor is such a truncated amount of time.
Yeah.
Like in the UK, we really only get 10 minutes. not at our endo appointments, but at a GP appointment.
Yeah.
But even at endo appointments, they're pretty time constrained. So they're doing the best they can, but there's really not a lot of time for empathy.
Right.
And sometimes the thing that makes all the difference is the empathy piece. So I once had a doctor, like, for example, they were asking me, how many times a month do you have lows? And I was like, I'm having lows all the time. I couldn't, like, I said in my insulin pump video, when I switched over, I was having lows like a couple times a week, several times a week. And I was honest about that, and honest about the fact that I was struggling. And the doctor was like, well, that's ridiculous. Like, you should not be having that many lows. And I was like, I know, but I need help because this is happening. But her reaction was so extreme.
Right.
Like, you shouldn't be, that just shouldn't be a thing.
Yeah.
That it made me feel crappy. It made me feel like a failure. And if she had just phrased that a little bit differently, it would have softened the blow.
Yeah.
Like, even like, I'm sorry you're having that many lows. Let's see what we can do to fix this. Rather than like being aghast, like, what are you joking me? Like, that shouldn't be happening. It's not just like take a pill and this is the solution.
Right.
It's such a, it so requires so much interaction from the patient.
Yeah.
And because diabetes is different for everyone.
Didn't you have a doctor tell you you were checking your blood sugar too much?
Yeah.
I remember that.
I did have that. Yep.
Yeah.
About, it was before I got on the Dexcom. Well before, actually, probably about 5 or 6 years ago, I was checking my blood sugar, finger pricks, 10 times a day.
Yeah.
And they were just like, you're checking way too much. And she actually said I was obsessive, and I like had an issue with how obsessed I was.
Right.
And I was like, oh, yeah, that was hard to hear.
Yeah.
And maybe there was reasoning behind that could have made that a little less hard to hear. But for me, I was like, this is what I've been doing for years. This is what works for me. This is what makes me feel comfortable. And I was walking into the doctor's office with a great A1C. So there was a reason why I was walking in there as a well-controlled diabetic, and yet I was being criticized for how I was controlling my diabetes.
How many times was it a she? The doctor?
The doctor, yeah.
How many times did she think you should be checking it?
4.
4 times a day?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Just wondering.
So that was tough.
I remember that one.
Yeah.
Okay. This is the reverse of that last question.
Okay.
And I guess you would say, what is the best thing you could say to a diabetic or ask someone about their diabetes?
Mm-hmm.
Again, some people don't want to talk about it.
Yeah.
You're the opposite of that.
Yeah.
You have been forever. But even like nice things that people don't usually, you wouldn't hear normally in a conversation about diabetes.
Yeah.
Hopefully this made sense.
Yeah, no, it makes sense.
Sort of the opposite of the last question.
Yeah. I think anybody, for me, that comes at it and wants to know what is it, first of all?
Yeah.
What is it like for you? Anybody that just asks a thoughtful question and listens is pretty darn great, I think.
Yeah.
Like, it's like with everything. If they're taking a genuine interest in your life, in your well-being, you can tell.
Yeah.
You can tell if somebody's
So
genuine.
even questions that are bad, that we said are not...
There's no bad question.
Exactly. So even if they ask one of these questions and it could be perceived as bad, if they have the right intention, like, it's good.
And
I'm sure I asked you all kinds of stuff.
And never, even David was saying before this thing, he was like, can I just ask you this one question, because it might be a stupid question or it might be bad. And I was like, no, don't ask me on camera. And I don't even know which one it was, but
multiple.
There is no bad question. In my mind, how are you supposed to know anything about this without asking?
Yeah.
It's just, it would just be so unreasonable for me to think I just don't think there's any stupid question.
Very unreasonable for you.
Very. But it was so unreasonable for me to think, you stupid? Or like, you don't know what you're talking about? What do you know? You don't live with this disease.
No.
And how nice to be asked any questions whatsoever, because it shows you care, or the person asking you questions wants to know, wants to further their information about it, wants to further their knowledge about the person that you are, what makes you you.
Yeah.
Even if it is a question that seems like, well, can't you just eat a bunch of cinnamon and that cures your diabetes?
I never asked you that.
You did never, to be fair, never did. But even if it's that, it's, people want to find solutions.
Right.
So sometimes those questions come out of like just a desire to find a solution.
Yeah.
And to like offer up.
Guys like to do that a lot.
Yeah, they do.
Like, I'll solve this for you.
Yeah.
I
Totally.
can't solve your diabetes.
Yeah, but you
If
know.
cinnamon won't do it, I'm out of answers.
Well, thanks for being on. And that's great too. Like, actually, it's kind of a joke, but like, somebody's saying like they can't solve your diabetes.
Yeah.
But recognizing that it's tough, and also recognizing that asking the questions is still worthwhile, even though there's not a problem that can be solved per se.
Yeah.
Asking the questions that hope for a solution, and also asking the questions when you know there's no definitive solution.
Yeah.
Those are both caring ways to talk to somebody.
Yeah.
Especially if you know there's nothing that can be solved and you still want to know. Because that's the piece about diabetes that's very important. It's the emotional aspect of dealing with the disease.
Yeah.
There's no cure, so you have to battle it. And the battle is wearing and difficult, and at times harrowing, but
And they still don't really know what even causes it, right?
no, not really.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's tough.
They're a little bit they're very unclear about what triggers.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. Last one.
Yeah.
I forgot. Oh, okay, this is sort of similar to the question I asked before. And I asked you this one the other day, but I've noticed it more now. And I noticed this in like certain movies or TV shows, or I actually heard it just the other week when I was with my dad. I heard someone say it.
Yeah.
And I was like, ooh, I don't think like that's not. I actually told my dad, I'm like, that's not a nice thing to say.
Okay.
He's like, what are you talking about? When people, for example, they're like, eat a bunch of sugar or candy, or they'll get a huge cake, and then they're like, oh my gosh, I'm going to become a diabetic if I eat this.
Yeah.
Does that make you mad? Is that hard to hear? Or are you kind of just like, oh, I get it? Because that's sort of a big thing.
Yeah,
I've heard it quite a lot.
Yeah, and it's portrayed in media quite a lot.
Exactly.
Yeah. To be honest with you, that is hard to hear.
Yeah.
I think it's hard to hear for two reasons. First of all, it's inaccurate.
Right.
So that's not what you don't have a working pancreas and then eat a cake and then have a lifelong condition.
Right.
After said cake.
Okay.
So it's just inaccurate.
Right.
I think it's also shaming people for eating things, or the amount they're eating, or turning it into like, this is difficult, but basically shaming people for what they're eating, and also shaming people for the disease that they have or exists in the world. So it's sort of like, you ate that cake, you're bad for eating that cake, and then you get your result of eating that cake as being type 1 diabetic.
Right. Or a type 2 diabetic.
Or a type 2, exactly.
Or a type 1.5 diabetic.
Yeah, which also exists.
Would that exist?
Yeah.
Yes, I know that now.
But yeah, I think there's a lot of innate blame as a type 1 diabetic that you feel sometimes. Oh, I shouldn't have eaten that because that made me go high. Oh, I should have taken less insulin because then I got this low. It's my fault, it's my fault, it's my fault, because you're initiating all the treatment decisions.
Yes.
So there's a lot of blame that I struggle with off and on.
Sure.
And I'm sure a lot of other people, or I imagine a lot of people do too. So then I think that thing, though people may just be ignorant in the statement.
That's what it is.
It is
It's
that.
just, yeah.
But it's sort of mixed. I think that particularly upsets me because it's mixed in with like shaming somebody for what they're eating and shaming somebody for the decisions that they're making.
And nobody says that about other diseases, really.
No. Yeah.
Like, oh, you do that, like you're gonna get cancer.
Yeah.
Or you're gonna get leukemia. It's like,
exactly.
I've never heard that.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly. Exactly.
Okay.
Whereas not only do we joke about that in society and in the media in some ways, oh, you're gonna get diabetes.
Yeah.
We laugh at that. We make light of it.
Right.
Whereas, yeah, you don't make light of those other diseases that, I'm not saying one is like the other, and like diabetes like cancer or leukemia or anything like that. That's not what I'm trying to compare, but it's certainly not fun.
No.
And it's also not our fault.
Right.
I just don't think you should shame people
Right.
for the diseases that they have, whether lifestyle played a part or not, and it's not black and white. So yeah, I just think it's a bad look. So actually with that one, that gets on me a little bit.
Yeah.
For a variety of reasons.
Yeah. Nobody really realizes how hard type 1 diabetes is. I don't even get it. I mean, I see you almost every day.
Yeah,
no,
yeah.
Definitely. We were talking about that last night with your mom.
Yeah.
That some people, I mean, one day you don't have it, the next day you have it, and then it consumes your entire life.
Yeah.
And that must be, I can't relate to that.
Yeah.
I witness it. You have it, your dad had it, like your brother has it.
Yeah.
So I see it all the time, but like, you have to be your own doctor sort of, at all times.
Yeah, yeah. You're right.
It's stressful.
You're right. But even that is just really, like, the way you just described that and saying that it's stressful or that it's hard or whatever.
For you, stressful
for me, yeah.
I'm not, yeah.
But that makes you feel seen. And it's like, okay, yeah, it is hard. And thank you for saying that. And thank you for seeing. Yeah.
That's all of them.
So that's all the questions?
Yeah.
Thank you. I think those were wonderful questions.
Yeah.
I really do.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Those were good answers.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Thanks. So there we have it. That's just been David and I kind of talking about, well, he's asking me questions and trying to kind of open up the discussion, not only from type 1 to type 1, but also type none to type 1?
Type non-diabetic?
Type 0? Type non-diabetic.
That's better.
Yeah. You know what I mean. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I hope it opened up your eyes if you love someone who's a type 1 or a type 2, or you're just curious, like anybody, you know, on this planet is welcome to be. I hope that opened your eyes and that you found it interesting. So, from David and I, we wish you a wonderful, wonderful day wherever you are in this world. Great blood sugars, straight CGM lines, all of that wonderful stuff. Also, if you're a non-diabetic, we wish you an open heart and an empathetic heart when dealing with type 1s, because it can be tricky, and we as type 1s really appreciate that empathy and that openness. So thank you. And most of all, and most importantly, I say it all the time, I wish you a happy, healthy mind with it all. Thank you guys so much for watching. Have a wonderful day, and see you next time.